Coming up tonight, the Ovation makes her way to Skagway. We take a train up to Canada, and ships pass in the night. It's all coming up, so let's set sail. Welcome to day number 8 of the cruise from on board the Ovation of the Seas Alaska sailing. Today was Monday, May 20th, 2019, and our final official port of call of this sailing. Today our location was Skagway, Alaska, and so far we've done Icy Strait Point, Sitka, Juneau, sailed the Hoover Glacier, and now we had Skagway, the final port of call. Tomorrow is a sailing visit to the Endicott Arms and Dawes Glacier. So this was the last time we get to leave the Ovation of the Seas, see her from abroad as we travel the area around her. Tomorrow we will be on board and remain on board for the next 3 days as we make our way back to Seattle. So this morning we started docking just after 6 a.m. with a scheduled arrival at 7 a.m. We were docked, it appeared, by 7 a.m., but there were some issues that caused us not to be cleared until closer to 8 a.m. And then this evening we had a scheduled 8:30 p.m. departure, and once again we were early. By 8:15 we were already starting to get untied from the dock, and we cleared the harbor by 8:30. Then we haven't had too many of these, but we had a big ship spotting today, and mainly ship spotting night. In port with us today was the Celebrity Millennium. She arrived at 7 a.m., so she was already docked in there when we arrived. And then once we were cleared, as I was headed off to my excursion at 8 a.m., the Seven Seas Mariner arrived. She docked at a slightly different area of the harbor than where the Millennium and the Ovation were located, but still very visible from our ship right next door. And then at 6 p.m., the Seven Seas Mariner departed, while at 8:30 p.m., we departed, followed immediately by the Celebrity Millennium shortly after. While sailing tonight, just a few minutes ago, I did spot a few more ships. We passed at first the New Amsterdam at 12:45 p.m., and immediately behind her was then the Ruby Princess. Right behind her was the Celebrity Solstice. And then behind that one was another one, the Eurodom. So we had 4 ships pretty much lined up, headed the opposite direction from us tonight, sailed right past us between about 12:30 and 1:30 this evening. So that was a nice sight. We haven't seen too many ships while at sea, but that was 4 in one evening now. For the weather, it was an absolutely beautiful day. At the beginning of the sailing, we had a bit of rain, some poor conditions mixed with some good conditions. Today was primarily good conditions. We had a sunrise at 4:16 a.m. this morning. This evening, we had a sunset at 9:40 p.m., and that one we could see those colors coming over the mountain as we have most nights. We also continue at 1 a.m. to still see a little bit of that light shining over the mountains in the area, so we are very close to 24 hours of at least some level of light still being visible. The temperature, though, was the big story. Alaska, oftentimes considered to be a colder itinerary, one that you have to bundle up a bit for. Today, we had a listed high of 55 degrees. But the actual high today hit as high as 73 degrees for the majority of the day. So it was an incredibly hot day up here in Alaska. It was hotter here than it was in Vancouver and many places south of us. And it was absolutely beautiful. Tons of blue skies all day long. This afternoon, some clouds rolled back in and it got a bit cloudy. But majority of the day was the blue clear skies that you want to see. Made some absolutely perfect picture conditions. You could see for miles and miles and miles to spot all the different mountains in the area. And there was no rain at all up until a couple minutes ago. About 1 a.m. while waiting for the Eurodome to sail past, it did start to downpour outside. So that was the first rain that we've had in a couple days now, I think since the morning of the Huber Glacier. But hopefully that will clear out of here because we do have another sailing, very scenic event for tomorrow morning that we don't want those rains to remain around for. As for the seas, they've been incredibly smooth. We are inland, so there isn't a whole lot of movement there. We don't have the oceans to deal with, so it has remained very smooth. And the compass claims 13-knot winds. At times it feels a bit windy, other times it's pretty mild, so it seems like it's really about the way the mountains and the areas that we are that affects the wind more than anything. So then moving on to the compass for today, another port day, another set of activities to go through. This morning I got up at 5:45 to watch that arrival. We were of course alongside at 6:45. I grabbed a quick breakfast up in the Windjammer. Was going to do the back deck because it was beautiful out, but they had it closed for cleaning this morning, so I unfortunately could not do that. But I did eat inside and got done in a couple minutes because by 7 o'clock I had to get down to Boleros to meet for my excursion today, which was the Yukon Adventure and White Pass Scenic Railway. That was a 7:30 excursion. We didn't get off the ship until closer to 8 a.m. this morning. Seemed like they primarily had issues with the gangway system and this new port. This is the first time that the Ovation Seas has ever visited this port. And when we got off, it was another very interesting port. The actual area that was used to get on and off the ship was a floating barge, which meant that as those insane tide swings took place, it would float up and down with the ship and keep everything at a nice even level. So that allowed for getting off the ship on deck number 2 right onto that barge. But then there was a ramp from that barge up to the main pier, and that ramp would change throughout the day. This morning when we got off, it was incredibly steep to get up. It was a very difficult ramp to climb, and that was likely part of the reason for the delays, because when we got to the top of the ramp, they were working to try to set up a gangway that would go from deck 5 straight across to the actual pier area so that you could avoid the barge and that ramp as a whole. I'm not sure if they ever got that running. We did leave at that point, so I couldn't tell, and when we returned, they did not have that upper ramp running, but it was a much better condition, and that upper ramp would have been rather steep at that time. As we saw the Millennium, though, a little bit later on as we moved down the pier, she was using gangways on her upper decks that allowed guests to walk pretty much straight off the ship and onto the pier, which is very convenient for them. So as we got up to the pier, we then headed towards our bus that took us over to the actual train to head on our voyage for the day. Brought us through town a little bit, saw a few quick sights and glimpses of that. We were behind schedule because of the fact that we were delayed getting off the ship this morning, and that meant that we had to get straight to that train as quickly as we could in order to keep on schedule the best possible. Once on the train, we took a long voyage all the way up the mountain to Fraser, Canada, and along the way, of course, saw all the different sights, some beautiful mountains, waterfalls, tons of incredible vistas along the way. And our guide provided a lot of history, stories about the different areas of the track, what went on during the construction of the railroad and the various elements of it, how things have changed over the years. And of course, most importantly though, we saw all that snow. We got up to the Yukon area and saw a bit of that as well. A lot of different changing nature and scenery today as we went on that voyage. At the end of that ride, we then got off the train and boarded another bus, this one to take us on a bit more sightseeing as we made our way back to Skagway. At first, we headed farther into Canada, went to check out a suspension bridge that allowed us to walk right over top of a massive river of glacier water that was flowing down the mountain. And along with that stop, in addition to the sights and the views, we also got to eat some bison chili for lunch while there. After that, we continued on to the official Welcome to Yukon sign to get some more pictures there before heading back towards Skagway, making several stops on the way down the mountain. And To be completely honest, the bus ride was probably better than the train ride. Along the train route, there's a lot of scenery, a lot of scenic stuff to see, but there were a lot of trees that blocked your view along the way. But on the bus, it was pretty well cleared away with people driving. They obviously have to keep the roads very safe, and they had very wide roads with large shoulders, which meant a lot more wide open, clear views to really appreciate that scenery around you much easier than you could actually do on the train. So the bus ride was certainly an enjoyable part of it, and not just the transit in the case of many of the excursions. Once we did get back to Skagway, we then took that journey around downtown to learn more of the history of it and see some of those sites before having the option to either get off in downtown for some shopping or head back to the ship. We considered getting off in downtown, but it was incredibly hot out at that time. It was 73 degrees and blue, sunny skies, and the excursion explicitly listed that you should dress incredibly warm for it, so we were obviously not dressed for the conditions at that time in town, so we opted to head straight back to the ship instead. And once on board, took a few minutes of the cabin and headed to the top deck, because as we were getting close to the ship, we could see the North Star was running today. So at 3 o'clock, took a North Star ride. There were only 6 people on that ride. One of the smallest rides I've done. I think it might be the second smallest ride of North Star I've done so far. Total. The shortest being Quantum with I think 4 or 5 when we had that really rough windy conditions. But it was only 6 people today. They were trying to get people to go again. When they are in port, there are very few people on the ship, and it is the perfect time to get on board North Star. On this voyage, I got to do it in Vancouver, did it on the sea day, which was a reservation, and then I did it in Icy Strait, Sitka, Juneau. They were not operating. They were doing some maintenance yesterday, replaced some parts on it, but they were operating today in Skagway, and I got to do it there. Hubert, of course, they were charging that $50 price, so I couldn't do it. So tomorrow they'll be doing that $50 price again, so I won't be doing it again tomorrow, so that'll probably be my last North Star ride for this voyage. But that was 5 voyages on North Star, which is huge for any sailing, and 5 times in an 11-night sailing is certainly a major accomplishment. And North Star really doesn't get old. That scenery keeps changing. It's always different every time you do it. There's different things to see, different things to look at. The scenery, the lighting, the weather, everything changes. It's always something new when you go up there. So that was 3 o'clock. Took probably about 20 minutes because we did wait a little bit to try to see if anyone else would show up. And then from there I had a little bit of time to relax before dinner this evening. At 5:15 p.m. we had dinner, another casual night. And tonight's dinner menu had several items that are unavailable. I mentioned the other night there were several unlisted items on menus, but we've also seen on multiple occasions of sailing where items on the actual printed menu were swapped out for different items because an element wasn't available. A certain fish, certain ingredient couldn't be done and it had to be changed out. Tonight, unfortunately, the item that was unavailable was the one that I was really looking forward to, that tortellini and a blue cheese sauce. So instead, I went with the roasted turkey for my entree. Didn't really see any starters, so I opted to try and have some of the steak fries and malt vinegar from the fish and chips as my starter instead, and my waiter was able to pull that off and bring me out a nice plate of that to begin my meal. And then for dessert, I got the apple pie a la mode, along with some coffee ice cream, which was an ice cream option on one of the desserts this evening. After that, I then headed to that departure, that 8:15, and we sailed on and on and on. So many waterfalls, so many beautiful scenes this evening as we set sail. I stuck it until about 10 p.m. to watch everything because there was so much to do, and at that time there was still more coming to look at. But there was a trio of events at 10 p.m. to go check out. So first I made my way over to 270 where they had virtual concerts starring Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns. We've seen this on the Quantum of the Seas. I've got the whole video out there if you want to watch that. And I caught a glimpse on Anthem of the Seas, but now in Ovation of the Seas I could really compare it. And it looked pretty much in line with what we saw in the Quantum of the Seas, but I'm not positive. I kind of feel like Quantum might have also included some extra lighting rigs that were set up to help enhance that experience. where this purely used 270s venue, but it seemed like the lighting and the videos were integrated much tighter and better than what it was when it first launched on Quantum of the Seas. So it could just be my memory, but I feel like they might have improved the overall video quality of it a little bit in the years since. Also at 10 o'clock then, over in the music hall, they had the Liars Club, and that is a game that we saw on MSC Seaside a couple months back. That ship, it was adult only, R-rated, featured beer prov, and was the full-blown adult-only comedy show. Tonight it used the cruise director staff. It was about PG-13, and it was a much tamer version of the game. It used the same concept of listing a weird word, and then 4 members of the cruise director staff went through and each one individually explained what the word was.
Logoria. Logoria is actually a knit. It is a design named after Eva Longoria, which is not Logoria at all. It's Logoria.
At the end, guests chose which one they believed to be the truth, but instead of doing it by a raise of hands, cheering, anything like that, it was done through papers where everyone would run up and hand the paper to the person they believed was telling the truth, and at the end determine who most people believed was telling the truth, as well as who was in fact telling the truth. And even that reveal was done in a very similar fashion, with a little wander around and trickery until the final truth comes out.
Everyone is saying, let's see, how did we do? How did we do? Carlos, how many did you got?
2.
Super. Seth?
20.
Minus?
19.
Yeah, okay. Erica?
I am 6. 6.
That means the majority.
6 amazing teams.
The majority goes supreme.
I run out of fingers to count.
Now the person who is telling the truth, please stand up. Who told the truth? Who was it? Please stand up. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth teller.
So those both started at 10 o'clock, and at 10:15 tonight was my headliner showtime. There was an earlier one at 8:15, but it obviously conflicted with that departure. So I went with the 10:15 headliner showtime starring Ronn Lucas. Ronn Lucas, of course, a ventriloquist. Seen him a couple times before on other ships already. Tonight was pretty much the same act. Every time he's on, it's always hilarious to watch. So much good comedy, so many great jokes to it. But it is a little bit repetitive now that I've seen him at least 3 times that I can remember, if not more. And the act is still pretty much the same. There are a couple little tweaks, a couple jokes that change out, but for the most part, it's a standard routine each time that he has been on.
A little Elvis Presley in the hips. Oh, in this
So that was 10:15, brought me to midnight. Midnight, I went outside to look and see what things were like tonight. It was still up about 55 degrees out, so still a nice warm evening outside. And we once again had a beautiful sight over on the port side exclusively tonight. In the forward port side, we had a gorgeous orange moon coming up over the mountains. Just an absolutely beautiful sight, just like we saw the other night. And then in the port aft, you could still see the sunlight shining over the mountains. So it's just an absolutely beautiful view out there, only on the port side tonight compared to last night where it was split between the 2 sides of the ship. So that brings us to about the end of the night. After that, I saw those ships passing in the evening, but that was the end of the official compass, the end of the activities for the day. Once again, we were in a port day, so we do not have an interview or any other special activities to include. But tomorrow we are in Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier from 7 a.m. to noon, so that is another scenic sailing morning. Hopefully get a lot of great views, a lot of stuff to see, and a lot of stuff to share tomorrow, so be sure to come back and check that out. For now, I'm Derek Cohn. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the links.